Chapter 2181 Unstoppable. Emperor Bai used his 9-star armor and reached the fighting power of a Stage 4 Great Emperor. Stage 4 Great Emperor was equivalent to Chaotic Divine Demon Realm. Emperor Bai cast secret skills of Star Palace and allowed his overall power level to increase tenfold. This meant that he was one of the stronger ones among the Chaotic Divine Demon Realm. This was the strongest that Emperor Bai could ever get. The results. Emperor Bai was still suppressed in every way possible. The battle powers of the two were not of the same level. The secret skills of Star Palace could only last for 10 seconds. Emperor Bai could barely stop Blood Emperor within the then seconds. What would happen after 10 seconds? Many of the experts from the eternal chaotic world looked desperate and had no hope left. Under the crazy suppression by Blood Emperor, the 10 seconds were up. Whoosh! Once the time was up, the star power dissipated as his fighting power dropped significantly. The Blood Emperor used his spear and thrusted towards Emperor Bai. Emperor Bai could not stop the spear and was penetrated by it. A wave of divine power burst forth from the spear and strangled the divine body of Emperor Bai. Within seconds, the divine body of Emperor Bai reformed almost instantly. I see. Both of you have the same techniques. Blood Emperor laughed coldly, unsurprised. Emperor Bai pulled away from Blood Emperor as he fell silent. Jian Wushuang and the experts from the eternal chaotic world all fell silent. Even after using the secret skills of Star Palace, Emperor Bai could not stop Blood Emperor. Who else from the eternal chaotic world could stop him? Will the eternal chaotic world really be destroyed in the hands of the Blood Emperor? Ancestor Xianxia was shaking uncontrollably as he stared at Blood Emperor. Is there no other way? Abysmal Saint Master laughed bitterly. We tried our best. Even the Sword Emperor and Emperor Bai used all they have. It is too bad that the Blood Emperor is far too strong. The underworld god shook his head. All the experts were overcome with grief and desperation. Jian Wushuang turned around and took a deep breath before he sighed. Everyone, let us use everything we have before we die. Everything we have? Ancestor Xianxia and everyone else turned to look at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang said firmly, Soul ignition, self-explosion, everything we have. Ancestor Xianxia and the remaining experts were stunned. Soul ignition? Self-explosion? They would be sacrificing life for life. It does not matter if we die. At least the eternal chaotic world is still around and can continue to exist. If Blood Emperor does not die, then the eternal chaotic world will turn into the next 3 emperors' world where everyone will die. Jian Wushuang continued word by word, for the living things on the eternal chaotic world, for our home, we must kill Blood Emperor, no matter what it takes. Jian Wushuang turned crazy. The experts from the eternal chaotic world clenched their fists upon hearing what Jian Wushuang said. They were ready to give everything they had. They had no choice and they could not back off. Once they backed off, the eternal chaotic world would be destroyed and they would still eventually die. What, are all of you going to sacrifice everything you have and try to kill me? Blood Emperor looked at Jian Wushuang and his friends with interest and smirked. He could see what Jian Wushuang and his army planned on doing. They would cast soul ignition and self-explosion to try and kill him as well. The question was, would he care? He was in the chaotic divine demon realm, and experts at this realm were not as simple as Jian Wushuang thought. No matter how many ordinary chaotic realms there were, it was almost impossible for them to threaten him. Ha ha. Come. Let me see all of you struggle even though there is no hope left. The Blood Emperor smiled. He held his blood-red spear and took a step. He walked forwards slowly. Each of his steps placed pressure on the experts from the eternal chaotic world. He liked to see the look of desperation on the faces of his enemies. Blood Emperor got closer to Emperor Bai and Jian Wushuang with each step. Under the huge pressure, the look on the experts from the eternal chaotic world turned even crazier. Be prepared. Jian Wushuang said coldly as his voice reverberated in the ears of every expert from the eternal chaotic world. The experts from the eternal chaotic world were prepared to die. They were prepared to sacrifice themselves by casting self-explosion and causing the most damage to Blood Emperor. Right before the Blood Emperor was about to attack, he stopped in his tracks. He halted and turned his head in other directions. Looks like an interesting guy is here. Blood Emperor squinted his eyes as a glimpse or seriousness replaced the playfulness in his eyes. Jian Wushuang and the others realized as they too looked in that direction. A figure in the distance. He was the size of an ordinary human. He wore a clean, snow-white cloak. He had a cold and arrogant vibe as his tall figure stood tall in space. He radiated no aura, just like a cloud of air. It did not feel like he belonged to this place at all. However, this man had eyes that showed he could disregard everything to stand up to even heaven and earth. He stood there motionless and quiet. However, it was like he was the focus of the universe. Even after reaching the chaotic divine demon realm, Blood Emperor could not cover this man's presence. He is. The experts from the eternal chaotic world all stared at this figure who had just appeared. It's him. Abysmal Saint Master exclaimed as his eyes widened. It was as though he was looking at the scariest man in the world. Abysmal Saint Master felt fear like never before. He could never forget this man, his eyes, and his sword. That man was his nightmare. When Emperor Bai and Jian Wushuang saw the man, they were excited. This man who had just appeared was Emperor 13. Chapter 2182 Arrival of Emperor 13. Emperor 13, an expert from the ancient past. He was a mysterious man and no one knew for sure how powerful he was. Back then, during the battle during the lineage of Star, the darkness from Abysmal Saint Master had disappeared with just a simple stare. One simple slash had destroyed Abysmal Saint Master's body armor and almost killed him. After fighting head-on with Emperor Bai, he had forced Emperor Bai back with a simple sword. And that was simply a consciousness embodiment. But now, this was the original body of Emperor 13. The original body had come personally. Jian Wushuang and Emperor Bai were excited. Even though they were clueless about the true identity of Emperor 13, they deduced he was on their side from his previous actions. Emperor 13 reached the center of the battlefield in front of Blood Emperor. He looked at Blood Emperor coldly and indifferently. Even the Blood Emperor shook when he met the gaze. It was cold and arrogant, disregarding everything and everyone around. It was as though to Emperor 13, Blood Emperor was nothing more than air. Blood Emperor was angry but helpless when he saw that gaze. Emperor 13 had been one of the most powerful men back in the ancient past. He was top 5 in terms of power level during the battle on the ancient battlefield. On the other hand, Blood Emperor was. Even though he was an emperor from the Blood Clan, there were 6 emperors from the Blood Clan. He was the weakest out of the 7. He was incomparable to the great Emperor 13. Back in the ancient past, he would have run without hesitation when he saw Emperor 13. But now, it was different. Emperor 13, I have heard from Demon King Chen Yu that you are in the same state as me. Your original body fell into a deep sleep and only your consciousness embodiment is around. It does not seem like the case. Now your original body is awake. Blood Emperor squinted his eyes and stared at Emperor 13. The great battle of the ancient past was too horrific. Many of the experts from the ancient past were severely injured and had fallen into a deep sleep. Furthermore, the stronger one was, the longer they would sleep and the harder it was for them to wake up. If not for the opposing blood formation, who knew how long Blood Emperor would take to wake up? However, Emperor 13. Back then, during the battle, your injuries were much lighter than the others. It is normal for you to wake up after such a short period of time. The Blood Emperor continued. Emperor 13 stood there coldly, not saying a word. It was like he did not hear Blood Emperor at all. Seeing this, Blood Emperor's face twitched. Just like in the myths, you really are quiet. Back in the ancient past, Blood Emperor did not meet Emperor 13 before, but he had heard of his quiet nature. He rarely spoke. Even if he did, he would not speak rubbish. Even if he spoke, he went straight to the point. Emperor 13, what do you want to achieve in coming here? Blood Emperor stared at Emperor 13 nervously. Emperor 13 looked up as a glint of killing intent flashed across his emotionless eyes. Killing you. 2 simple words came out of his mouth as it radiated out in the battlefield. Immediately after he said that, he attacked. A sword appeared in his hands. Back at the lineage of Star, Emperor 13 used his fingers as swords and managed to defeat Emperor 13 with just his consciousness embodiment. Now, Emperor 13 took out a sword. This sword looked simple, yet sharp. It only radiated death. It seemed like an ordinary sword. Once this sword was drawn, the Blood Mountain sword in Jian Wushuang's hands trembled. Jian Wushuang could feel a different emotion coming from the sword. There was some terror in it, but more of unyielding. It was the first time Jian Wushuang had felt this kind of unique emotion coming from the Blood Mountain sword. Emperor 13 swung the sword towards the space where Blood Emperor was in casually. The swing was so casual it looked like it contained no power at all. Similarly, there was no divine power nor sword essence felt. However, the moment the sword started swinging, boom! Heaven and earth was shocked as the heaven and earth at the center of the battlefield exploded. A large crack appeared as it enlarged at an unbelievable pace to an astonishing size. 1,000 feet. 10,000 feet. 100,000 feet. 1,000,000 feet. It ended up being 1 trillion feet long. The moment the crack appeared, everything including space-time, air, and every element there was disappeared. In this space, there were no elements. There was only a sword light. It was dim and inconspicuous. On a normal day, this sword light would not attract any attention at all. However, this sword light was the only remaining substance left in this space. It turned into the one and only, for all eternity. This is that sword skill. Emperor Bai and Jian Wushuang stared at this sword light in disbelief. Both recognized this as the sword skill that had defeated Emperor 13 back then. The only difference was that this sword light was even stronger and more breathtaking. Everyone was breathless. Everyone was staring at that sword move. As for Blood Emperor, his attitude was completely different. Before, he had been almighty, proud and treated Emperor Bai and Jian Wushuang as though they were his playthings. This was the same even after Emperor Bai casted secret skills of Star Palace. But now, he was deadly serious when he was dealing with the sword skill that Emperor 13 had cast. When the dim sword light appeared in front of him, the blood-red spear in his hands moved. Boom! A ray of crimson light pierced the sky as the space behind the Blood Emperor turned into 18 azure hell. The endless sea of red was out of place in this world. Blood Emperor became the absolute emperor in this sea of crimson red. His thrust his blood-red spear out. The moment the blood-red spear moved, deafening roars could be heard from within the sea of crimson red. It was as though the souls and remains within the sea of crimson red were angry and expressing their unwillingness to resign themselves to their fates. Chapter 2183 Leader of the Seven Stars. Under the horrified looks of everyone around, the weak but eternal sword light collided head-on with the blood-red spear. Boom! A deafening sound was heard. The entire three emperors' world trembled and threatened to collapse under the pressure. At the edge of the sky, the sea of blood-red dimmed as the souls in the sea of crimson red fell silent. Sword light started to disperse in all directions. Whoosh! Whoosh! A figure appeared far in the distance as he steadied himself. This red figure was Blood Emperor. As for Emperor 13, he stood there coldly with an ordinary and dim sword in his hands. Emperor 13 has the upper hand. Emperor Bai raised his eyebrows in relief. That is right. Jian Wushuang clenched his fist and replied. The experts from the eternal chaotic world were elated. After the short exchange of blows, the sword light from Emperor 13 dispersed the sea of crimson red and forced Blood Emperor back. Everyone knew that Emperor 13 had the absolute advantage. Back then, Emperor 13 only used his consciousness embodiment to fight me, and I felt he was strong beyond belief. He was the reason why I believed that stage 4 great emperors existed. Now, it looks like he is much stronger than even I had imagined. Emperor Bai said seriously. Even though this is the case, it is still too early to be happy. Jian Wushuang said. It was true that during the short exchange just now, Emperor 13 had had the upper hand. One exchange was not sufficient to conclude the power level of Emperor 13 and Blood Emperor. Most importantly, even though Blood Emperor had been suppressed during that fight, he was smiling in an elated manner. His smile got wider and wider. At the end, he burst out laughing. Ha ha ha! His laughter reverberated in the battlefield. Experts from the eternal chaotic world could not understand why he was laughing, as he was obviously at a disadvantage during the battle just now. Only Jian Wushuang and Emperor Bai had a bad feeling of what was about to happen. After Blood Emperor stopped laughing, the way he looked at Emperor 13 was completely different. He had had a serious and fearful expression before. After all, Emperor 13 had been far too terrifying back in the ancient past. He had no confidence in going up against Emperor 13 after all those years of living fearfully about Emperor 13. After that short exchange of blows, he had gained the confidence to fight Emperor 13 head-on. Emperor 13, I thought that you were still that leader of the 7 stars back in the ancient past, the man who could force experts to submit to you and have the power to stand up to even the master of the Holy Land. If it was back then, I would have retreated without hesitation if I ever ran into you. But now, under the restriction by the heaven and earth, you are only in the chaotic realm. Even if you have incredible techniques, you can't use them. Under these circumstances, what are you going to beat me with? At this point, the fear that Blood Emperor had was gone. In its place was desire. The desire to kill Emperor 13. Emperor 13 was a high and almighty Manto Blood Emperor. What else could be more exciting than to kill Emperor 13 with his own hands? Hearing what Blood Emperor had said, Emperor 13 was still emotionless and had no changes at all. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang and Emperor Bai were stunned. From what Blood Emperor had said, they picked out a lot of information. First and foremost, Emperor 13 was one of the peak superpowers back in the ancient past. Second, Emperor 13 was a member of the 7-star Black Sect. 7-star Black Sect, leader of the 7 stars. A man who can make everyone else submit, and even challenge the master of Holy Land. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. He did not understand what it meant to be the leader of the 7 stars. Nor did he understand how powerful Master of Holy Land was. But he could deduce that Emperor 13 had been one of the superpowers back in the ancient past. At least in front of the Emperor 13, the Blood Emperor was nothing. Even the Blood Emperor admitted that he had no courage to stand up against Emperor 13 and would retreat whenever he saw him. Ha ha! Die, Emperor 13! Blood Emperor roared with laughter and excitement. Blood Emperor attacked. He took a casual step out, but that step was so fast that no one from the eternal chaotic world could see it that clearly. An endless sea of crimson red spread out once again. Before this, the sea of crimson red had only appeared behind the Blood Emperor. Now, it covered the entire heaven and earth. Everyone could feel the strong killing intent coming from the sea of crimson red. Emperor 13 stood at the center of the sea of crimson red, indifferent as ever. He slashed out with his sword once more. The same casual movement, but this time, it was a sweeping action. The sword light created had no aura at all. However, the sword light created a large hole in the sea of crimson red. This hole started to enlarge as it tore the entire sea of crimson red, revealing the endless dark void. Emperor 13 then flicked his wrist and he thrust his sword forward again. A sword light burst forth. This sword light was not dim and weak. On the contrary, it shone brightly. It was so bright that most people could not even open their eyes. In the move before, the move had been extremely dim, now it was extremely bright. They were on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Far in the distance, the experts were shocked and curious at the bright sword light. There was no one in the direction that Emperor 13 had slashed his swords towards. Who was he targeting with this slash? Right when this question popped up in the heads of the experts, a blood-red figure appeared under the illumination of the bright sword light. This figure became the target for the bright sword light. Everyone around took a cold breath as they were all amazed by the incredible techniques Emperor 13 had. Chapter 2184 Half-Step Divine Demon. The blood-red figure was Blood Demon. Blood Emperor was not surprised when he saw the bright sword light turn brighter. He used the blood-red spear in his hands like a stick as he used it to smash the sword light. A bloody shadow of a blood-red dragon collided onto the sword light. That bright sword light was smashed into pieces. Blood Emperor took a step forward and appeared in front Emperor 13. His irises were filled with excitement as his body was boiling in blood chi. Boundless sea of blood. Splash large amounts of blood chi liquefied and turned into clouds of bloody mist. This mist was endless as it covered the entire heaven and earth, including Emperor 13. The entire sea of blood crashed towards Emperor 13. The sea water formed little blood snakes which contained incredible power. Each had the power to fight against peak stage 2 great emperors. At least 100 of these snakes were formed from the sea of crimson red. The hundreds of blood snakes slithered towards Emperor 13. On the other side of the battlefield, Jian Wushuang, Emperor Bai, and the other experts from the eternal chaotic world were dumbfounded when they saw the sea of blood. The Blood Emperor was not using his full power to begin with. He did not even use half of his fighting power. Emperor Bai clenched his fist tightly as he looked at Blood Emperor, defeated. He cast secret skills of Star Palace, which enabled him to have 10 times his usual fighting power. Even so, he was at a disadvantage when he fought Blood Emperor. After 10 breaths, he could not even hold his ground against Blood Emperor when his secret skills of Star Palace duration was over. At that point in time, he threatened Blood Emperor, who was in the chaotic divine demon realm. He only understood that Blood Emperor had not used his full strength when he saw this battle against Emperor 13. Back then, Blood Emperor had not used any secret skills. He had fought casually. With his fighting power, can Emperor 13 stand up against the Blood Emperor? Emperor 13 muttered to himself. Jian Wushuang too looked on coldly, but he had the same worry deep in his heart. If back Emperor 13 had been back in his prime, he could have defeated Blood Emperor easily. However, this heaven and earth had big restrictions. Emperor 13 could only use power up to the realm of chaotic realm. Many of his secret skills, techniques, and understanding of rules of order had been suppressed to a very low level. On the other hand, even though Blood Emperor had also been placed under the same restrictions, he had his opposing blood formation, which had allowed him to break the rules and restrictions temporarily. This gave him the power of an expert in the chaotic divine demon realm and utilize rules of order and other higher forms of techniques. Under this circumstance, was Emperor 13 still a worthy opponent? Within the boundless sea of blood, many of the blood snakes were on their way to bite Emperor 13. Emperor 13 stood there coldly and indifferently. One man holding onto one sword. He swung his sword out. Every swing was extremely smooth and casual. However, this kind of sword skill killed tens of the blood snakes. After several of these swings, more than half of the blood snakes were dead. Large numbers of snakes were formed continuously from the sea of flood as they charged towards him endlessly. Ha ha, there is no use. This is one of the secret skills that the Blood Clan have. You should have fought against it back in the ancient past. Unless you can destroy the boundless sea of blood, you will be drained to death. It is a pity that I can only use power up to the level of the chaotic divine demon realm, hence only the weakest type of snakes are formed. If not, even so, it is more than enough to kill you. Emperor 13, there is no way you can destroy the boundless sea of blood while you are a mere chaotic realm expert. Prepare to die. Never have I thought that a man that could stand up to even the master of Holy Land would die in my hands. Ha ha ha! Blood Emperor roared with laughter, looking as though the death of Emperor 13 was inevitable within his sea of blood. Blood Emperor would tremble with excitement whenever he had the thought that the almighty Emperor 13 would die in his hands. That was Emperor 13. During his prime, the strongest leader of the Blood Clan could barely go up against him. There were not many such superpowers back in the ancient past, and now one was going to die by his hand? Once Emperor 13 died, all the treasures he had would fall into the hands of the Blood Emperor. He was elated. Emperor 13 remained cold and emotionless after he heard the Blood Emperor's laughter. He took a glimpse at the boundless sea of blood that was creating blood snakes. Suddenly, a sword essence erupted. At that moment, it was as though he was a sharp blade. A blade that had existed since the dawn of time and undergone eons of polishing and finally became the unmatched legendary sword. This sword hovered there as a limitless amount of sword essence pierced the sky. Even the earth trembled under the influence of the sword essence. Far from the battlefield, Jian Wushuang and Emperor Bai and the other experts were dumbfounded by the limitless sword essence. This is especially the case for Jian Wushuang as he was a sword user. He could clearly sense how deep and complex the sword essence was. He meditated to the sword doctrine and had an incredible understanding of the sword principle. However, his understanding was like a drop of water in a vast ocean compared to Emperor 13. At the same time, the sword essence pierced the sky and shook the ground. The aura on Emperor 13 started to grow at a fast pace. This is... Blood Emperor widened his eyes in surprise. He could clearly feel the aura of Emperor 13 skyrocket. It had originally been at the chaotic realm. Now, it was climbing to a new level above the chaotic realm. Chaotic divine demon realm? No, this aura is more powerful than a chaotic realm expert's, but I have yet to fully enter the chaotic divine demon realm. He is in the half-step divine demon realm. Blood Emperor muttered to himself as shock was written all over his face. Half-step divine demon. This was the realm between the chaotic divine demon realm and the chaotic realm. This man. Blood Emperor stared at Emperor 13 in disbelief. Chapter 2185 Blood Essence. Unbelievable. Yes, Blood Emperor could not believe his own eyes. He clearly knew how powerful the restriction this heaven and earth had. Under normal circumstances, anyone in this heaven and earth could only use power up to peak chaotic realm. Under these circumstances, he only reached the chaotic divine demon realm after years of planning to create this opposing blood formation via his consciousness embodiment, sacrificing countless lives of living things within the three emperors' world. To reach where he was, he had sacrificed far too much. He had never expected that Emperor 13 could reach the half-step divine demon realm. Even though half-step divine demon realm was still different from chaotic divine demon realm, this meant that Emperor 13 had the power to influence this heaven and earth. However, Emperor 13 did not have the help of any formation, nor had he sacrificed anything. He had only used his fighting power to influence this heaven and earth to reach half-step divine demon realm. On one side was a man who sacrificed greatly, took a long time to create a formation to influence heaven and earth. On the other side was a man who was not prepared at all but used his raw power alone to influence heaven and earth. The difference between the two was clear. Emperor 13, who used his sword essence alone to influence the heaven and earth, stood there coldly before he swung his sword again. The same move, but its power was many times greater than it had been before. Hum! The sword light sliced the boundless sea of blood apart into pieces. The entire boundless sea of blood collapsed. The secret skill that Blood Emperor cast with all his might crumbled. Looks like your power is not much stronger at the half-step divine demon realm. However, now you can use rules of order. Your battle power is much greater than before. Blood Emperor's face turned dark. The fighting power that Emperor 13 had displayed was far beyond Blood Emperor's expectations. He could only dream of killing Emperor 13 now. At that point in time, Emperor 13 attacked again. This time around, Emperor 13 moved instead of simply swinging his sword. He swiped it casually, before flicking it upward. A clean yet complex move. The speed was so fast that none of the experts near the battlefield saw the move. Humph! Blood Emperor was not afraid of that move. His blood chi boiled as he thrust out his blood-red spear viciously. On the battlefield, Emperor 13 and Blood Emperor were brawling it out at close range. Both of these two were much more powerful than the peak experts within this era and had incredible techniques. This battle amazed the experts from the eternal chaotic world. They are far too powerful. King Chen Xing took a deep breath and said, looking at the battle. There, billions of feet of space were turned into a battlefield. They could barely see two auras colliding in the center of the battlefield. Blood Emperor and Emperor 13 were so fast no one could actually see them. The most they could see were sword lights or spear lights. Every sword light looked simple, but they were extremely complex. Jian Wushuang excelled in the sword principle and had the highest understanding of the sword doctrine among the experts of the eternal chaotic world. Even he could not dissect the complicated sword lights within the battlefield, as each sword light was extremely deep and complicated. This was after Emperor Sword Principle receiving great restrictions from heaven and earth. He could use the bare minimum of his sword skills, swordsmanship, and rules of order. How powerful would Emperor 13 be if he was at his prime? This swordsmanship. Jian Wushuang was engrossed. Jian Wushuang felt that a new door had appeared in front of him which could bring him to greater heights in terms of swordsmanship. The swordsmanship he had honed up till today was nothing. The other experts too were stunned. Even Emperor Bai stood there dumbfounded. Emperor Bai was the strongest man in this era. He clearly knew he had no right to enter this battle. Emperor 13 could influence the restrictions the heaven and earth had on him to reach the half-step divine demon realm. With this new power, he could even go with Blood Emperor, who was in the chaotic divine demon realm. However, This does not change anything. Emperor Bai frowned. Jian Wushuang's face turned dark. What Emperor Bai had said was indeed true. Blood Emperor had to die in order for this war to be over and for eternal chaotic world to be safe. The Blood Emperor had to die so that the opposing blood formation would stop running and the eternal chaotic world would then successfully survive this ordeal. If the Blood Emperor did not die, he could control the formation to cover the eternal chaotic world and kill the countless living things within the eternal chaotic world to gain more blood chi. With more blood chi, he would be so strong that he would be unstoppable. If that were the case, even Emperor 13 would not be able to handle him. What should we do? Jian Wushuang frowned. At the same time, in the middle of the battlefield. Ha ha! Emperor 13, looks like you aren't called the leader of the 7 stars for nothing. You can go even with me even though you are in the half-step divine demon realm and I am in the divine demon realm. It is a pity that the restrictions of this heaven and earth have such a strong effect on you. If I had more time to guide this opposing blood formation towards eternal chaotic world, I could collect even more blood chi. At that point in time, you, Emperor 13, will die. Blood Emperor laughed hysterically. Emperor 13 frowned. This was the first time he had showed expression ever since he had started his battle against Blood Emperor. It was obvious that Blood Emperor was a difficult person to deal with, he was just difficult to deal with. Emperor 13 continued to cast sword skills in his battle against Blood Emperor as he scanned the battlefield. He looked at Jian Wushuang. Emperor 13 raised his eyebrows as a special blood essence appeared in his palm. He flicked his palm as this blood essence flew towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was shocked. He had not communicated with Emperor 13 and yet he immediately knew what Emperor 13 wanted him to do. He stretched out his arms to catch the blood essence. Once he had caught it, the blood essence seeped into his body. Instantly, a seemingly unlimited amount of special power filled Jian Wushuang. This special power was star power. Within the blood essence there was star power that was many times purer than the star power he accumulated when he used secret skills of Star Palace. His stored star power could only allow him to cast the 3rd scroll of the secret skills of Star Palace for 1 attack. Now, the star power was sufficient for him to cast the 3rd scroll of secret skills of Star Palace for 30 minutes. Secret skills of Star Palace. Jian Wushuang cast the 3rd scroll to secret skills of Star Palace immediately. Chapter 21 86,000 times the fighting power. Secret skills of Star Palace, also known as secret skill of 7 star, originated from 7 star Black Sect. Back in the ancient past, there had been numerous experts from the 7 star Black Sect. Their understanding and usage of the secret skill of 7 star had reached incredible levels. These powerful experts formed the 7 star Black Sect had managed to infuse star power into their blood essence. Emperor 13 was the leader of the 7 stars and cultivated the secret skill of 7 star. However, the restriction by this heaven and earth was far too large for him. He could not use most of his fighting power and most of his secret skills. It was not only difficult to cast secret skill of 7 star. Emperor 13 would not be able to cast 9 star armor like how Emperor Bai did. If Emperor 13 could use these techniques, he could kill Blood Emperor easily even though he was a mere half-step divine demon expert. Sadly, he could not. However, even though he could not cast secret skill of 7 star, his blood essence, which was concentrated in star power, was very useful for Jian Wushuang. Just like the creator of Lineage of Star, the late Star Palace Master, he could make use of the blood essence of an expert from 7 star Black Sect to his secret skill of 7 star to last for a long time. This was why the Star Palace Master had managed to wreak havoc on the battlefield. VAR AXID 6327 document, IXO 6327, SSP 6327 math floor date now. Windowed pubic stag window pubic stag. However, as the amount of the blood essence started to decrease, Lineage of Star was exposed to greater danger. Jian Wushuang received the same type of blood essence. Half an hour. The secret skill would last for half an hour. Jian Wushuang widened his eyes. His aura erupted and became even stronger as he absorbed the star power. The experts from the eternal chaotic world saw Emperor 13 throw something towards Jian Wushuang, but did not see what exactly it was. They did not know what Emperor 13 was trying to do. Suddenly, a terrifying aura exploded on the battlefield. The experts from the eternal chaotic world all looked over towards Jian Wushuang. This is Sword Emperor. This aura belongs to Sword Emperor. What a terrifying aura. Why has the Sword Emperor's aura grown so much? Everyone looked at Jian Wushuang, surprised. It was no surprise that they were surprised. After Jian Wushuang had cast the third scroll of secret skills of Star Palace, his fighting power had become 1,000 times more powerful than before. Jian Wushuang was already very powerful, and was considered one of the strongest Stage 3 great emperors. Now, his fighting power had grown by 1,000 times again. How powerful would that be? Jian Wushuang. Emperor Bai stared at Jian Wushuang closely. He could clearly sense that the aura that was radiating from Jian Wushuang was stronger than him even after he cast secret skills of Star Palace, 9-star armor and his other trump cards. It was on a different level. This feeling. Jian Wushuang clenched his fist as he sensed his newfound powers. He was excited. Back at the Imperial City, Jian Wushuang had cast the third scroll of the secret skills of Star Palace once to destroy the Supreme Emperor Stone. He was not as powerful then, and the duration of that one sword skill was so short he could not experience his new powers. As Emperor 13 gave him his blood essence, the saturated star power could allow that secret skill to last at least 30 minutes. Hence, he had a chance to sense his newfound powers. My current power should be at the level of peak chaotic divine demon realm, or even stronger. Jian Wushuang exclaimed to himself. There was no way great emperors could do anything in the face of this absolute power. It was no wonder that an expert in the chaotic divine demon realm was so much more powerful than one in the chaotic realm. After familiarizing himself with his new powers, Jian Wushuang raised his head and locked his vision onto Blood Emperor. This man must die. Jian Wushuang swore silently as he gripped his Blood Mountain sword tightly. He turned into a shooting star as he flew towards his target. Even Emperor Bai could not intervene in the battle between Emperor 13 and Blood Emperor. But now, Jian Wushuang attacked. Hum, the sea of crimson red filled the entire space as the countless souls within howled in agony. Blood Emperor was the master of the sea of crimson red. He held his crimson red spear as it thrust out as blood red lightning. He grew in size. Air that radiated gloom spread out in all directions. On the other hand, Emperor 13 was like an ice mountain. He continued to swing the sword in his hands. The sword lights created were either extremely dim or extremely bright. Some of them were overpowering, while others felt like there was no energy in them. His sword principle captured the hearts and minds of many of the spectators. The two were in the middle of a heated battle. Suddenly, a figure ventured onto the battlefield. This man was Jian Wushuang. He ignored the divine power storm and ventured into the heart of the battlefield. The Blood Mountain sword in his hands had a terrifying aura. Hua! A sword light appeared out of nowhere. This sword light looked so simple, so amateur as compared to that of Emperor 13's. However, the power it contained was at least equal to, if not stronger than, the sword light Emperor 13 had created. Once the sword light appeared, the space in front of it was torn into half and a gigantic crack appeared in heaven and earth. At the center of the crack, there was a storm of powerful sword lights that was flying towards Blood Emperor. Blood Emperor looked over as he felt something was different about the space around him. When he saw it was Jian Wushuang who had cast the sword skill, he looked at him in disdain and said, "How dare a mere mortal like you stand up to an almighty like me?" Scram! Blood Emperor yelled as the crimson red spear swept out towards Jian Wushuang. This brought along layers of crimson shadow. It was like a dragon as it smashed towards Jian Wushuang. After sweeping his spear at Jian Wushuang, the Blood Emperor turned his head and continued to look at Emperor 13 coldly. He only took Emperor 13 seriously. As for Jian Wushuang, he was a mere ant that he could have killed easily. If not for his unique constitution, the Blood Emperor would have killed Jian Wushuang already. Right when the Crimson Dragon collided with the sword light head-on. Chapter 2187 Unworthy Opponent. Blood Emperor could sense the terrifying power as the surrounding crimson red power concentrated on his crimson red spear. His spear was made of special materials and was almost indestructible. Under the impact, it bent into an arc. He himself backed off from the strong impact. Blood Emperor was surprised, while Emperor 13 was shocked. Whoosh! Emperor 13 appeared in front of Blood Emperor like a ghost as a strange sword light appeared. It went straight for his throat. The speed was incredibly fast as it threatened to penetrate the throat. Right then, the crimson red light on Blood Emperor turned dark. Phut! The strange sword light penetrated Blood Emperor's throat and completely destroyed his body. However, there was no blood at all. The body turned into a bloody mist and dissipated. In a space not too far away, Blood Emperor dematerialized. He looked mean and scary. He looked up at Jian Wushuang and exclaimed, "This aura. It is a secret skill of 7-star. Even though the secret skill of 7-star is powerful, it does not make sense that it is so much more powerful. Especially in his power. VAR Exid 6327 document, element by Exid 6327, SSP 6327-math, floor date now. Windowed at pubic stag, windowed pubic stag. Blood Emperor was dumbfounded. The power of the sword of Jian Wushuang gave him a shock. In terms of power, he felt that Jian Wushuang could overpower him. But Blood Emperor had already reached the chaotic divine demon realm. Jian Wushuang stared at Blood Emperor. What a weird technique. The sword light by Emperor 13 was about to kill him, and yet he could escape unharmed. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself in pity. That was a good chance to kill Blood Emperor, but he had dodged the bullet to his head. As for Emperor 13, he was still indifferent and calm. It was as though he had foreseen that Blood Emperor would do that. Even if I failed once, there is always a second try. With my current fighting power, I believe that I can kill him with the help of Emperor 13. Jian Wushuang's aura boiled as the 7 Hongjun golden swords burst forth instantly. It was the same 7 Hongjun golden swords and the same understanding of the space-time sword principle, but his power level had increased. As of his current power level, each of the 7 Hongjun golden swords had reached the power level of the chaotic divine demon realm. Any of these swords could suppress Emperor by easily, and there were a total of 7. Whoosh! 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 The 7 beams of golden light appeared around Blood Emperor at the same time. They attacked him from 7 different angles. Jian Wushuang's size grew. We could clearly see the 9 heads and 18 arms coming out of his well-built body. He took a step, clearly indicating that he wanted to engage in close-range combat. Blood Emperor squinted his eyes as he moved his body slightly. The 7 Hongjun golden swords passed by him without even touching his clothes. Blood Emperor was not afraid when he saw Jian Wushuang charging at him with a well-built body. He held his spear in one hand as crimson-red mist spread out once more. Following that, spear lights filled the entire space. Each spear was like a venomous snake coming out of its nest, silent and stealthily. Each was incredibly fast. Most importantly, each spear radiated a thick aura of rules of order. Blood Emperor only had 2 arms and could only wield 1 spear. Jian Wushuang had 18 arms and swords. Furthermore, he made use of the special fighting technique unique to the ancient god clan. Even so, a scene that made Jian Wushuang widen his eyes in shock happened. Blood Emperor suppressed Jian Wushuang with a single spear. It was completely one-sided. At first, Blood Emperor had been very serious. As time passed, he had become more casual. Using his spear, he thrusted, flicked, sweeped and even smashed at Jian Wushuang. Even though it looked casual, every attack was almost perfect. Jian Wushuang felt that his swordsmanship was useless in the face of these spears. Not only swordsmanship, he could not even fully utilize his power. How can this be the case? Jian Wushuang frowned. Even though I am more powerful than him, I am being suppressed. I have already utilized my ancient god body, cast ancient god secret skills and maximized my close combat abilities. Jian Wushuang was shocked. He knew that the attacks from Emperor 13 and Blood Emperor were extremely complex and powerful. However, no matter how powerful it was, Jian Wushuang should have been able to hold his ground using 18 arms and the fighting techniques of the ancient god clan. The results? Unbelievable. He possesses incredible spear skills. Furthermore, his fighting techniques, consciousness and ability to make decisions are far superior than mine. So this is a superpower from the ancient past. Jian Wushuang was dumbfounded. In the space nearby, Emperor 13 stood there coldly. He witnessed the battle between Jian Wushuang and Blood Emperor but did not interfere at all. However, Blood Emperor was getting impatient. At the end of a day, an ant is still an ant. Even if the ant possesses incredible power, it does not know how to use it at all. Blood Emperor mocked. He started to swing his crimson spear even faster. It became 30% faster. However, Jian Wushuang was not able to handle this increase in speed. Phut! The crimson spear collided with the holy body of Jian Wushuang. Even with the 5-gem armor, a hole was pierced in his holy body. He backed off immediately. While he was backing off, the divine power within Jian Wushuang swept out and healed his injury. Jian Wushuang stood there once again, studying Blood Emperor with shock in his eyes. You cannot beat him with fighting technique alone. Emperor 13 finally spoke casually. Jian Wushuang sighed and agreed. Jian Wushuang's power was stronger than Blood Emperor's after casting secret skills of Star Palace to increase his fighting power by 1,000 times. Based on the power advantage alone, it was impossible to defeat the Blood Emperor and kill him head-on. Blood Emperor's experience, spear skills, and understanding of rules of order were far superior to his. If I cannot win by fighting techniques, I shall use brute force, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Chapter 2188 Mountain River Map, out. It was silent on the battlefield. Blood Emperor stood there holding his spear as though he was the ruler of the Sea of Crimson Red. Jian Wushuang and Emperor 13 stood a distance away, staring intently at Blood Emperor. Ha ha! What a pity! Blood Emperor laughed and broke the silence. Blood Emperor stared at Emperor 13 and smiled coldly. Emperor 13, what a pity. You could have killed me if the power this brat has now is in your control. It looks like fate is on my side today. With the power you mastered at half-step Divine Demon Realm, all you can do is go even with me. You cannot kill me. As for Jian Wushuang, he only has power. His own fighting is far too weak to pose a threat to me. Blood Emperor mocked. The effect of two different people using the exact same power could be vastly different. For example, for the same amount of power of the weakest real god, an almighty or great emperor could use that power but have the fighting power of a peak real god. If a weak universe god had the power of a peak real god, the battle power he could use would only be around that of an ordinary real god. This was the difference. Jian Wushuang and Emperor 13 was an obvious example. Emperor 13 was simply in the half-step Divine Demon Realm, yet his battle power was on par with Blood Emperor, who was in the chaotic Divine Demon Realm. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang was too weak for the top-tier experts from the ancient past. Even if he had extraordinary power from casting secret skills of Star Palace, the fighting power he had was still weaker than that of Blood Emperor. Emperor 13, I respect your fighting power. It is a pity that there is no way that both of you can kill me. Hence, all you can do is to stay there and watch me destroy this world. Blood Emperor laughed delightfully. He felt it was a pity that he was not able to kill Emperor 13. However, he felt elated that a superpower like Emperor 13 had suffered. Hearing this, Emperor 13 had no reaction. Jian Wushuang looked up and said, Blood Emperor, it might be too early for you to be happy. Oh. Blood Emperor looked over at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang stopped talking as he whipped out a scroll. This scroll looked ordinary. However, it radiated an ancient and unique aura. After the scroll appeared, Jian Wushuang channeled his divine power and tossed this scroll high up into the sky. The scroll merged with heaven and earth instantly. Hum, a special light was seen high up in the sky as something occurred. This is... Everyone looked up at the sky. The sky was blood red, had been empty. Now, the space was filled. It was filled by a gigantic and beautiful picture scroll world. This picture scroll world occupied the entire sky as it turned into life. An ancient and majestic aura came from within the picture scroll world. One could even hear soft chimes. Every chime calmed people's minds and made them forget the negative thoughts. The experts standing below stared at this picture scroll world and they saw an endlessly large world. This world had mountains and streams. The scenery was awesome as well. Within this world, what attracted the most attention were the 9 continents that were spread out at the different ends of the world. Each of the 9 continents had countless cities and humans. Every human on the continent was very realistic and radiated aura that belonged to cultivators. It was as though the picture scroll had come to life. The picture scroll world was alive. If people did not see Jian Wushuang taking out this treasure with their own eyes, they would think the picture scroll was a real world. My power grew. The mountain river map seems even more realistic when I use it with full force. Jian Wushuang exclaimed. Mountain river map was one of his many trump cards. It was also the strongest treasure he had. This treasure came from his master, Xianxia. He had used the mountain river map many times before. During those times, this mountain river map had not felt so realistic. The aura was also much stronger now. This is the mountain river map belonging to the 7-star Black Sect. Blood Emperor Irises constricted in shock when he saw the mountain river map. This is the mountain river map. No matter the aura or the way to activate it, it is exactly the same as back then. The strongest treasure that the 7-star Black Sect has is in the hands of this brat. Blood Emperor looked at Jian Wushuang, indecisive of what he should do next. The mountain river map had been very famous back in the ancient past. Now, in the second era, a brat in the chaotic realm could wield it? Was this possible? Jian Wushuang ignored the Blood Emperor. With my current fighting power, how many seals can I cast? How powerful could they be? Jian Wushuang thought to himself as he anticipated the results. Let's try. Jian Wushuang attacked without hesitation. A continuous stream of divine power surged up towards the picture scroll world. There was star power mincing with the divine power. Immediately, an overbearing aura radiated from the picture scroll world. The picture scroll world had 9 continents. One of the continents looked like it had come alive as it moved within the picture scroll world. 9 province seal, the 4th seal. Seal of clouds. The 4th seal, Seal of Clouds, descended under the control of Jian Wushuang. The large province came down slowly. The sky turned dark immediately. Everyone looked up and stared at the majestic continent that was descending towards them. No one spoke as everyone was tense. There was silence. The only sound that could be heard was of heavy breathing. No one from the eternal chaotic world could stop this seal. Chapter 21 89 Province Seal. Boom! The majestic continent descended. The majestic continent covered too big an area and the suppressing power was incredible. Blood Emperor was located at the center of this majestic continent and had nowhere to run. He could only fight it head-on. Humph! Blood Emperor grunted as he turned gloomy. The mountain river map is an incredible treasure. However, its true power can only be used by a real expert. As for you, you can only cast the weakest skill for this mountain river map, the 9 province seal. Furthermore, you can't even cast the complete 9 province seal. You can never kill me with just this power. Blood Emperor pointed his spear towards the incoming continent. A crimson-red light appeared the moment he pointed his spear. This crimson light looked like it could destroy everything in this world as it charged into the incoming continent. The bottom of the continent was penetrated instantly as it crumbled into pieces and dispersed in all directions. Seeing this, the experts from the eternal chaotic world were shocked. How is this possible? He stopped such a powerful attack so easily? The Blood Emperor is far too strong. The experts exclaimed in surprise. At the center of the battlefield, Jian Wushuang remained indifferent. Compared to before, this 4th seal is much stronger now. However, it is impossible for this to kill the Blood Emperor, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. He knew that the 4th seal, Seal of Clouds, could not harm the Blood Emperor. He had cast it to test how powerful his 9 province seal was. What followed was the real deal. Boom! Limitless amounts of divine power boiled. Jian Wushuang started to make various hand signs. Another majestic province descended from the picture scroll world. The aura was even stronger and terrifying. This was the 5th seal of the 9 province seal. What a joke! The Blood Emperor roared, not afraid. A limitless amount of blood chi started to boil as the boundless sea of blood appeared again. The sea of blood was endless. Blood Emperor was at the center of the sea of blood. Large amounts of blood gathered to form a gigantic exotic beast. This exotic beast looked like it was invincible. The moment the beast was formed, a deafening roar was heard from the sea of blood and reverberated throughout the battlefield. The sound wave swept out in all directions. Many of the experts from the eternal chaotic world covered their ears even though they were far away from the battlefield. Those who reacted slower experienced bleeding from their eardrums. Those experts who were on this battlefield were at least in the chaotic realm. After the roar, the exotic beast raised its hands up high. The majestic province was held up and could not descend further. The fifth seal dissipated after the power was used up. Even the fifth seal cannot hurt him? Jian Wushuang thought to himself as he squinted his eyes. He could not cast the fifth seal with his own power. Now, he had the secret skills of Star Palace active, which enabled him to cast this seal. He never thought that the Blood Emperor could stop this attack so easily. Next up, Jian Wushuang made more unique hand signs. His divine power and star power were absorbed by the picture scroll world at an insane rate. Within moments, the sixth seal of the 9-province seal descended. The sixth seal? Blood Emperor was taken aback. The mountain river map was infamous for its several powerful skills. Even though the 9-province seal was the most ordinary skill in the mountain river map, it was definitely powerful when it was used against experts in the chaotic divine demon realm. The Blood Emperor took this attack seriously. Come. The Blood Emperor roared madly. The sea of blood started to turn violent as dark crimson armor appeared. The same armor appeared on the gigantic exotic beast as well. The exotic beast roared in anger. This exotic beast raised its hands once again in an attempt to stop the sixth seal. However, the sixth seal in the 9-province seal was at least 5 times as powerful as the fifth. The exotic beast could stop the fifth seal, but the sixth seal. Boom! The crimson armor of the exotic beast turned dark and the blood chi started to escape from the body once the seal collided with the exotic beast. Within moments, a loud boom was heard. The gigantic ancient blood beast crumbled under the pressure of the sixth seal. The remaining power was headed straight for Blood Emperor. Boom! The earth was split apart and the entire Blood Emperor sanctuary grounds was destroyed. What was left was a humongous crater so deep that one could not see the bottom. At the center of the crater, a figure stood, battered. This figure was the Blood Emperor. At this moment, his clothes were ripped and wounds could be seen on his crimson skin. There were bloodstains around his mouth as well. Even so, he was not angry. He smiled wantonly. Ha ha, not bad. The sixth seal. Is that it? Blood Emperor sounded like he was crazy. The surrounding experts fell silent when they saw this. The sixth seal that Jian Wushuang had cast could only cause light injuries to Blood Emperor. To kill him, the power of the sixth seal is not enough. Unless he has the seventh seal. Emperor 13 looked over at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was slightly depressed. He had to admit he had underestimated the fighting power of Blood Emperor and the techniques the experts from the ancient past had had. Even though the Blood Emperor was not in prime condition and was only in the chaotic divine demon realm, it would not be easy to kill him. The sixth seal did not manage to kill him. As for the seventh seal, the mountain river map had 9 seals, representing 9 states. Every 3 seals was a bottleneck as the next seal would be much more powerful and require much more divine power to cast. Jian Wushuang could barely cast the 6th seal. As for the 7th seal, not enough. With the amount of divine power I have now, I cannot cast the 7th seal. Jian Wushuang roared. All 9 ancient god stars crumbled in the next moment. Boom! 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 They crumbled one after another. Chapter 2190. Goodbye. Out of the 9 ancient god stars, he had destroyed 4 of them. The 4 stars turned into bloodline power that Jian Wushuang could use. Not enough. This is far from enough. Jian Wushuang's face darkened. Then, boom! 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 The remaining 5 stars crumbled together. Every single one of the 9 stars crumbled. He was betting everything he had. Instantly, ancient god's bloodline power erupted within his body as this power multiplied. Even so, Jian Wushuang realized he could not cast the 7th seal. Even after all 9 stars crumbled, I can't cast the 7th seal? Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. The difference between the 6th and the 7th seal was far too great. The amount of power needed to cast the 7th seal was much more than that needed for the 6th. Not enough. VAR Axid 6327 document, element biodex ID 6327, SSP 6327-math, floor date now. Windowed at pubic stag, windowed pubic stag, I need more power. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists as determination started to burn in his eyes. He had already used most of his trump cards. He had even used star destruction skill to its fullest and destroyed all 9 stars. However, he still required more power. At this moment, there was only one way left for him to cast the 7th seal. Jian Wushuang stood there, determined. He looked up slowly. He was not looking at Blood Emperor or Emperor 13. He focused his vision on a beautiful figure some distance away. That figure was Lang Ruxue. Looking at that figure, his heart burned. Sorry, Lang Ruxuang. Jian Wushuang said silently to himself. However, it was like this sentence had been transmitted into the sleeping consciousness of the beautiful figure far away. Lang Ruxue stood there quietly. However, when she saw Jian Wushuang's eyes, she shuddered. Emperor Bai, please take care of Green Fire World for me, Jian Wushuang said as his voice reverberated throughout the battlefield. Jian Wushuang, what are you saying? Emperor Bai asked, knitting his eyebrows. Jian Wushuang did not elaborate. He continued to scan the experts from the eternal chaotic world. Goodbye, everyone. Instantly, a vast amount of soul power erupted. Hum. The limitless amount of soul power was like oil meeting fire. It was set ablaze. This is... Emperor Bai turned pale. Soul ignition. The experts from the eternal chaotic world were shocked as exclamations could be heard everywhere. Soul ignition. A technique that would only be used in a situation where one would definitely die to do the most amount of damage to their opponents. Before Emperor 13 reached them, the experts from the eternal chaotic world were prepared to cast soul ignition to sacrifice everything to defend their home. They did not do so as Emperor 13 had arrived and seen hope. However, under the clear view of everyone, Jian Wushuang had used this technique. Jian Wushuang was trying to drag Blood Emperor down with him. 9 Province Seal, the 7th seal. After casting soul ignition, Jian Wushuang's power multiplied again. The limitless amount of divine power and bloodline power were fully utilized. Jian Wushuang's flushed face was twisted fiercely. With that expression, Jian Wushuang made seals using his hands. Jian Wushuang then forcefully used 3 of his own blood essences to further increase his power. He barely met the minimum requirement to cast the 7th seal. Jian Wushuang used everything he had and every single drop of energy, as all of this power gushed into the seal up in the sky. A limitless amount of energy poured in. Finally, an even more gigantic province appeared from the picture scroll world and descended. Dong! 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 Ancient chimes could be heard as they reverberated throughout heaven and earth. These chimes contained a special magic to it as it calmed everyone's mind. These chimes originated from the large province. At that instant, the entire battlefield fell silent. Dead silent. Every expert there looked up and stared at the gigantic and majestic province. Everyone held their breath. No one said a word. It was not because they did not want to speak. The pressure from the province was so great that no one could open their mouth. Furthermore, the majestic province did not target them, yet they were still under such incredible pressure. It would be hard to imagine how much pressure the Blood Emperor would be facing when the province targeted him. The 7th seal. Emperor 13 looked up and stared at the slowly descending province coldly. A flash of surprise could be seen from his emotionless eyes. "Let me help you," Emperor 13 said. The sword in his hands started to glow bright. It was so bright it looked like a huge sun that was concentrated in energy. Emperor 13 swung his sword. He did not move at all. He pointed his sword at Blood Emperor. Instantly, the large sun, which was made up of sword essence, burst forth and appeared in the space where Blood Emperor was before it exploded. Hum, 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 hum. The entire space turned into a sea of sword essence. This sword essence spread out and crashed towards Blood Emperor from all directions. Blood Emperor received suppression from both the 7th seal and the sea of sword essence. Is this what we can do? Emperor 13 squinted his eyes. Blood Emperor looked at Emperor 13 coldly. Emperor 13. If I'm not wrong, this should be one of your 3 strongest sword skills. World of Swords. It is a pity that you are in the realm of half-step divine demon realm and the power of this sword is so limited.